How's it going, everybody? All right, I got a deep dive into a special collector's edition of Muscle and Fitness with Arnold on the cover here. Okay, 20 greatest photos of all time. All right, this is a great magazine, and as you can see, it came with a free Arnold poster. And speaking of which, I still have that poster on my wall to this day, as you can see. All right, since Arnold is on the cover here, I'd like to take this time to address something that Arnold said that I personally disagree with. But anyway, here it is. I frequently did my heavy chest training on Sundays at Venice Beach. I got extra motivation for doing reps with 450 pounds because so many people were standing around watching me. And here's the picture of him lifting, I guess, 450 pounds at Venice Beach. So I'm just curious, is that you? All right, does it describe you? Sure as hell doesn't describe me. It did years ago. You know, back when I was younger, I did get off on attention to an extent. You know, you go in there, you know, of course, you remember I worked there. I worked at all these gyms where I trained. And you go in there, you put on a tank top, you know, you start lifting, you get all pumped up, you know, people start staring at you. You know, if there are girls in the gym, they stare. You know, when you get pumped, another name for it is short-term hypertrophy. All right, and that means that your muscles are just engorged with blood at the moment, so you get bigger, you know, while you train. It's just a pump. And I do think when I was younger, I got off on the attention, especially from the girls. But I outgrew it, man. I outgrew it. And personally, you know, in 2025, I think it's the wrong attitude. I think, you know, Arnold had the wrong attitude. I mean, no disrespect to him. He's obviously a legend, you know. But I think that attention should not be motivation for your strength training journey, you know. But then again, I mean, he was a bodybuilder, you know, and in bodybuilding, everything is about impressing people. You know, everything is about attention and, you know, being physically impressive. So I do kind of understand, you know, kind of. But, you know, oh, and for the record, he said, you know, like he said, having people watch him gave him motivation to do reps with 450 pounds. And man, I personally think that heavy lifting is overrated. As a matter of fact, I know it's overrated. You know, you can get away with it for a while you're young, but when you know when you get older, you know it's going to catch up to you, and that's just a fact. You remember, you know, your joints are not here forever. You know, the synovial fluid in your joints does not last forever. You know, and all of the heavy lifting will eventually catch up to you. You know, so I mean, if you're much past the age of 30, you know, I would definitely tone down the heavy lifting, you know, because, you know, exercise is supposed to be a fountain of youth, or the closest thing we have to a fountain of youth, you know, but if you abuse it, it ends up making you old before your time, you know, believe it or not, you know. But attention in the gym is a big problem. I mean, when I was a trainer, some of the attention-seeking people were annoying. You know, they'd get in your way. You know, they're loud, they're boisterous, they're lifting super heavy with incorrect form. You know, and there have been times when I had to go and save people. You know, when someone would get the freaking barbell stuck on their chest, and I'm working with a client, and I end up running over to help them pull the bar off their chest. All right, this is because they're showing off. They're trying to be impressive, you know. And also, when I say that people use the gym for attention seeking, it's also in the form of socializing. You know, they go to the gym and they're there to meet people. They're there to meet chicks. They're there to be popular. They're there to gain popularity. And sometimes I may need a piece of equipment, and someone would be monopolizing it while just sitting there talking, not even necessarily doing anything, but they're just sitting on a piece of equipment, you know, like the lat pull down. I need to use it, and they're just sitting there talking. It's kind of annoying. Another way that attention seeking gets in the way is, oh, by the way, there's someone doing work outside. You know, I hope you guys don't hear it. You know, I do. There's a lot of noise out there. So hopefully it's not affecting the sound. Now it just stopped. But anyway, another way that attention seeking affects exercise is when you deal with clients. You know, I've had clients that were mainly there for attention and mainly there to pick up people. You know, I had a guy once I was working with, and I showed him sissy squats. I don't know how many of you are familiar with sissy squats. Sissy squats are great exercise, kind of underrated. You don't hear or see too many people hear about them too much. You don't see too many people doing them anymore. But sissy squats are a great movement. But the truth is when you do them, you kind of look like you're a pole dancer. You know, it literally looks like you're kind of humping a pole or whatever you're holding on to, because you have to hold on to something. So I had this client do sissy squats, and I demonstrated the exercise, and he immediately turns me down. He says, "No, I'm not going to do this." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Because it looks stupid. It looks like I'm humping the pole." And I said, "Dude, you're here to work out, man. You're not here to impress people. You know, it's an exercise. It's just a legitimate exercise. You should give it a try." And he refused to, you know. So I was so pissed off. But anyway, he shot that down, and I had to move on to something else. The guy was there to impress people. All right. And I had another client. There's actually footage of me training him on my channel. There's a couple of YouTube shorts. I think it's called "Seniors Need Core Strength and Mobility" or something like that. Guy's name is David Klein, because, you know, I mentioned his name in the video. He was a great guy. I think he's like 91 or 92 now. He's in a retirement home. But this is back when he was like 84 or 85, something like that. And I'm working with him. And if someone comes into the meeting room, because this is where I trained him, he was a neighbor, so he lived in my condo building. So I would just train him right down in the meeting room. So if someone came in, he would start talking to him, you know, and sometimes I had him walking up and down the stairs, which is technically a form of interval training, you know, particularly for someone his age. So I just have him walking up and down the stairs for a great cardiovascular routine. And if someone came into the stairwell or into the area to walk up or down the stairs, instead of just letting them go by, he would have to talk to him. He'd have to say something. He'd have to crack some type of joke. And it really became annoying. I mean, but this guy, you know, was the biggest attention whore I've ever met in my life. Like, this guy was an attention whore. He'd do anything for attention. This motherfucker would douse himself with a flammable liquid and set himself on fire if it would make you pay attention to him. And he was also a hypochondriac, you know, so he thought something was bothering him, you know, his knee or something So he wanted to go to the doctor, and he asked me to go with him. And he literally paid me to go to the doctor with him. So I went to the doctor with him. And as soon as he walks into the office, he starts cracking unfunny jokes, and trying to draw attention to himself. And I found it embarrassing. I just found it so embarrassing. Why can't you just? Oh, and in the elevator, up heading up to the doctor's office, anybody that came in, got on the elevator, he strikes up a conversation and starts cracking inappropriate jokes, which was just so annoying to me. So I never went any place with him again. We have a cold stone creamery in our neighborhood, and he would ask me, "Hey, do you want to go get some ice cream?" And I'd have to make up an excuse, because if I went with him, he was going to go in there and make a scene. I've never met anybody who desired attention as much as this guy. In the gym, outside of the gym, probably in his fucking sleep. So if you haven't noticed already, I'm not an attention seeker at all. I'm not even making these YouTube videos for attention. I'm really not. I'm making these videos to educate people, to make my job a little easier. So maybe people can understand the true worth of a personal trainer, because the vast majority of people don't. And I want to combat all that misinformation, all the nonsense about building muscles and getting jacked. That's all a lot of these fake influencers talk about. And people need to know that there's more to exercise than getting bigger. There's a lot more to exercise than getting bigger. But obviously, that's what sells. Getting bigger, and the idea of getting bigger is what sells this stuff. So that idea is pushed to the forefront. But people have to remember that physical therapists use weights too, to heal injuries, to rehabilitate injuries, and also to prehab you so you'll be more resistant to injuries. There's more to this than just getting bigger. That's why I'm here. I'm not here for attention, but the desire for attention is totally tied to weight training in every guise. Everybody wants to impress people. And I just think it's the wrong attitude. And as a matter of fact, like I said, in the beginning, when I was younger, I did like attention, but I outgrew it. So what I did was eventually I stopped working out in gyms. I haven't worked out in a gym since probably 2016 or 2017. I work out at home. I have a ton of equipment in my home. Obviously I don't have like, hammer strength and Cybacks and Icarian and Nautilus machines or anything like that. That would take up too much space. But, I do strength training, obviously, and doing them without machines is better anyway, because it makes it more functional. So anyway, I'm in better shape now than I've ever been, and I get everything done, every body part done. But in addition to that, I get a lot more core stabilization because, like I said, abstaining from using a lot of the machines that you see at a commercial gym automatically makes everything more functional, and it's going to tie your core into it more, particularly if you decide to do a particular exercise on one foot, So, but yeah, I stopped working out in gyms because truthfully, when you work out without an audience, exercise becomes almost like meditation. And that's something I'd like to turn you guys on to. When you're alone and there's no audience, there are no eyes on you, it's like you're meditating, and that's personally what I like about it. And it also kind of teaches you about who you really are. Like, who are you when there's no audience? What kind of person are you when no one is watching? How strong are you? And I don't just mean physically strong, but how mentally strong are you when no one is watching, you know. So exercising when no one is around is completely different than the way it is when you have an audience at a gym. And furthermore, there are other reasons why I don't work out at gyms as well. Just all the bad experiences I've had, working for gyms, and, the trainers don't really get paid a fair wage. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of political stuff that has turned me off of gyms. But the biggest turnoff is all of the attention seeking, and I could go on for days about people doing ridiculous stuff in the gym to garner more attention. Like the guy Archie, who smashed his fingers trying to impress people with ridiculous amounts of weight, no range of motion, just to impress people. One of the guys said, "Hey, Archie, why don't you take half of that weight off and use full range of motion?" I think I may have told you this story before, so I'm going to make it real quick. I think I told you before in another video, but he had probably 800 pounds on the bar, and he was using a 1-inch range of motion. And one of the guys said, "Hey, why don't you take half of that off and just come down halfway, get some range of motion?" So we took the bet. This is a great picture of Ronnie Coleman here, obviously. Great picture of Arnold. And he did it, and, he was doing the squats within the squat rack, and he lost control of the bar and fell forward, and the bars stopped him from falling over completely. But he moved his hand somehow and grabbed the bar, and the bar smashed his finger. And after that, he went to another gym and never came back. He went to the Northwest location of Sport and Health and never came back. Is that Dexter Jackson? So yeah, he went to another gym and never came back. But he was always there for attention. It was so annoying, and he would come up to the trainers and give them advice, in ridiculous advice. Like, do you remember the one where people would say, "Hey, if you use lightweight and high reps, it'll get you more cut up," which is not true. It's bullshit. But he'd come up to us and say, "Hey, get you more cut if you do." Get the fuck out of my face, man. He's not even a professional. He's just another know-it-all gym guy, which basically is the point of this whole video, is the know-it-all gym guys. They're the biggest attention seekers. The guy that just goes to the gym and thinks he knows everything. Man, you don't know shit. I mean, I'm sorry, but you don't know shit. You aren't gonna really know this like you think you do until you do what I've done. You're gonna have to go to school for it. All right, you're gonna have to go to seminars. You're gonna have to take continuing education credits, and you're gonna have to train people. You're gonna have to see how this person's body reacts, and how this person's body reacts, and how this person versus this person and how their body reacts. And then once you've done thousands of sessions, then you can say that you know something. But just working on your own body doesn't teach you a fucking thing. It's working with other people and dealing with their contraindications that makes you an expert. But that's the biggest problem. So that's why I disagree with Arnold. But again, I'm going to reiterate the same point I just made. Yes, he was a bodybuilder, and everything with bodybuilding is about impressing people, impressing the judges, having an audience, seeking out attention. So I kind of understand if you're a professional bodybuilder, but for your general fitness enthusiast, I think it's bad. I think it's a bad idea when you're motivated by eyes that are on you. I think it's a bad idea when you're motivated by an audience, And once you unlearn that, man, the sky's the limit. You know, there's nothing like being motivated by yourself. I mean, sorry, there's nothing like being motivated, by your own internal self, if you know what I mean. By you, you know, without any external influence. There's nothing like that. And it's not easy to get there, you know. But, like I said, I mean, we've all probably been show-offs at some point or another, We've all done it. But at some point, you really do need to outgrow it, in my opinion. So, but yeah, man, do it for yourself, and try to focus on who you are and what you are when no one is watching, and not just in terms of strength training, but just in terms of life in general. Who are you when no one is watching? Do you take candy from babies? Do you abuse helpless little animals when no one's watching? Do you pick your nose when no one is watching? Whatever. I guess everybody picks their nose when nobody's watching. I imagine you don't want an audience when you're doing that, but you understand what I mean. Try to be your best self even when no one is watching. That's my impression. That's my impression of how things should be. So, what is this? This co-stars. What movie did Arnold do with John Leguizamo? I didn't know he did a movie with that guy. But yeah, man, this was a cool collector's edition. Everybody, when this came out, I was working at Washington Sport, and I remember a lot of the guys had to go out there and get this one. And I saw one of the guys with it, and I had to get it for myself. And that poster has served me well. Exhale after exertion. Yep, that's true. You don't want to build up too much pressure in your abdominal cavity. All right, that's how we get hernias, buddy. Letting that pressure build. Yep, man. Ronnie Coleman was so saturated, man. The guy was just saturated as hell. Jeez. Yeah, I think I'm almost at the end of this here. Personal training certification. Turn your muscles into money. Yeah. I think I'm just about done here. This isn't going to be one of those two-part deep dives. There's this before and after. And there's no way in hell this guy's natural. No way in hell. And it's not just cell tech or nitro tech that they're using there. Man. But yeah, man. This is right before it all ended. I mean, I would imagine that this was one of the last must-have muscle and fitness magazines. Because I mean, for me, this was a must-have, and it's in excellent shape. Unlike some of my other ones, this one is in excellent shape. And I think this is the end of the meat and potatoes of the magazine. No pumps, no weights, no surgery. Oh boy. All right. I think this is about it. I'll show you a close-up of this one. This guy. Troy Alves. Our toughest home workout ever. Speak of the devil. Yeah, I believe in working out at home, blocking out all the noise. But that's me. I made another video about that. Actually, the first video I ever made was about working out at home. It sucked, though. I mean, and I agree that it sucked. It was the first video I ever made, and I think it just was too long-winded, and the lighting wasn't right. It's still on my channel, but it sucks. But anyway, that's how I got started. And this my first video was talking about working out at home. And in that video, I'm talking about attention seekers and getting away from all the noise and all the political BS of gyms. So anyway, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Please remember to like, share, comment, subscribe. Leave it in the comments. I mean, if Arnold's ideology describes you, you know, the attention seeking thing. And at any rate, I will be back with more information and content on the fitness industry, personal training, and strength training in general. PLA Mind and Body Works signing out. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.